How many military families do you serve at your school? If you work in a school where the answer is none, it may well be a subject that isn't really on your radar. But my guest today, Louise Fetigan, is a founder of a charity called Little Troopers. And one of their key projects is their At School project, which provides teachers and educational professionals with the information and easily accessible resources to help support the unique needs of service children in school. Now, the project has been running successfully for 4 years, and the charity works closely alongside teachers, educational psychologists, behavioural therapists and play therapists to create the resources. So Louise actually joined the army herself as a teenager, and her husband continues to serve now. And she was inspired to create the charity in 2011 to help her own daughter, who was struggling with her dad being in the army, as she was the only service child in school. And, Louise didn't know where to turn for help. This is a unique episode. It was eye-opening. It was great just to bring to the forefront something that maybe not that many people know about. So I really hope you enjoy it and that you learn a lot. Louise, thank you so much for joining me on the Teachers Podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
So we've kind of already started the podcast but didn't record it because we were just getting too deep into conversation. So hopefully we'll be able to bring some of that now. But how would you explain Little Troopers to teachers who have never heard of it before?
So Little Troopers is a charity that supports all children with one or both parents serving in the British Armed Forces. So I served in the British Army myself. My husband is still serving in the British Army, and we've got a daughter, Madison, who this year's gone off to university. And I founded the charity 10 years ago because Afghan and Iraq was happening, and it was really clear that my daughter was struggling, and she just there was nothing out there military specific, and that was the birth of Little Troopers, the charity. Fast forward 10 years to where we are today, and there's a whole host of resources, projects and initiatives to support the British Armed Forces community. And one of those projects is Little Troopers at School, which was started 3-4 years ago now, where it became really evident that there was some schools that just didn't understand the unique challenges, the daily unique challenges that military children were facing. There's over 70,000 military children in education across the UK, and they do experience slightly different things to their civilian peers, whether that's moving home frequently, moving school frequently, mum and dad, maybe deploying. The Navy can be away for 10 months at a time. These really long periods of separation that happen really frequently. So it was, what do those unique challenges look like? And let's provide some real tangible, specific resources for education settings to utilise to help support those unique challenges. We wanted to make it really easy for teachers and schools to have really well thought out, planned resources that could make an immediate impact on the life of a military child in education. And it's about educating the educator. That really is what Little Troopers at School is about. The military community is, an unknown for many. But those unique challenges can impact military children, so their behaviours might be slightly differently, in school if they're going through some of those things. And we wanted to marry up what teachers understood and what military children were going through. So, that was better understood in schools.
Yeah, no, I love this. And we talked about this before, didn't we, about how, you can be in one school and have no idea about so many things out there. And that's why I love on the podcast that we can just sort of everyone broaden our knowledge, whether, you need to sort of, whether you need to know or not, if that makes sense. I think it's really helpful for everybody because I guess, and, I could be wrong, but, you've talked about parents being away for long periods of time. When things happen in children's lives, like, I don't know, say parents separate or something like that, then a teacher hopefully will know about it, and it's one incident. It's not a continuous incident happening over and over again in different circumstances. So that must be really confusing.
It's really interesting. And I was listening to some of your recent podcasts on trauma, and I think they really resonated with, what military children go through. And I think the reality is something that is really important to portray and to show people the reality of military life. So it could be that mum or dad is going away for a long period of time. Communication for submariners, that's non-existent. So if you've got a child with a mum or dad that is a submariner, they have no communication. They have a 60-word familygram once a week. So if you think you've got mum and 3 children, the boiler's broken, child's got star of the week that they want to tell their parent, lots has gone 60 words. That's all you can send. And then they can return 60 words in the familygram, so it's things like that we're not all FaceTiming. I know it's 2021, but for security and all those other things, often when military personnel go away from home, that communication is limited and sporadic. So you might have a child that hasn't spoken to their parent for 10 days. Nothing, not a dicky bird. That's a really long time in a 6 or 7 year old's life, and it's the same about, like you were saying, I believe, I'm a military family. My husband's been to war multiple times. Anybody could hang on really tight and get through 1 6-month deployment. It would be difficult and it would be really hard, but you'd kind of scrape through and out the other end.
Like we've all done with the pandemic.
Exactly. It's traumatic, and it's difficult and you have to dig deep, but you do kind of get through and out the other side.
Because there's an end.
Exactly. The difference with military life and what military children are going through is that it's repeated and sometimes concurrent. Often it's kind of, they're away, they come back for a little bit, then it's away again. And it's those repeated and concurrent situations. And often the parent at home is, potentially juggling lots of things, so it becomes quite stressful in the home. There's just lots of variables, and I think it's so important to us as a charity that education settings, it's just on the radar that if you have a military family and they've identified to you that they're from a British Armed Forces family, that we're understanding that there's lots of things going on, that, it's a whole patchwork of military life. They often move home and move school. Friendships are difficult because they're coming and going, and you've got this kind of separation at home happening as well. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. And I guess as well, just thinking about the reality of what that would mean, because we all always like to sort of put ourselves in someone else's shoes, don't we? It's also, I guess, whatever home life looks like, because the parent that's at home will be struggling too, and that will make it harder to just manage family life and what that means for the children when that parent's struggling as well. We can't be perfect, can we? Do you see what I mean?
And also, if that child is maybe 11, 12, older, teenager, our Little Troopers at School project is primary and secondary. That child sometimes feels they need to step up and they take on a lot of the responsibility. Maybe it's dad that's deployed and mum's at home, and they're sort of 12, 13 maybe, they're taking on that responsibility, and that's stressful. Not that anyone's asked them to or expects them to at all, but they feel that. And I think that's something that we need to be aware of as well, is that they, there's just so much that military children have to navigate, as well as all the real, daily life stuff that every child has to. If you think about the pandemic, we had lots of military parents deployed, and there was a pandemic going on. So military children really struggled because they were not only dealing with the pandemic and not being at school and, no normality, but they also had a parent away. There was lots of parents that had to go really short notice to do COVID bits and pieces. So it's kind of, they have to deal with everything every child's dealing with, and also this extra layer of complexity.
Yeah. And also I think it's about long-term effects that we don't know, that some of these children, I guess, will have to deal with as adults. So I actually know somebody, and they're not from a military family, but they've definitely felt the need as an older child to step up, just like you say. And I know that as an adult, that's something that they're trying to work through now, that kind of resentment of that. So it's so interesting, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because there isn't an answer, but I guess a strong awareness is so important.
Yeah, I think awareness is really important. And there's definite pros and cons. We've just done a podcast ourselves called Squad, and that was with secondary age. So that was with kids sort of 14 to 18, really talking about their military journey through education, you know, because so many military children, you know, my daughter has just started university, but she's been to 9 schools in different counties, different systems, different curriculums. She moved mid GCSEs, which was, you know, so difficult. But actually, across the podcast and speaking directly to these military teens, there's definite pros and cons. You know, they gain great qualities from being able to go into a classroom over and over again and be the new person. Isn't always easy, but it does equip you well as you start university and become a young adult. You know, and it was really interesting to hear some of those qualities that they felt they'd gained from being part of a military family, definitely in terms of making friends, being able to talk to people, you know, not being shy, that kind of thing. But obviously there was negatives that they felt, and a lot of them was like, oh, I'm never marrying anyone in the military, I'm never joining the military. But then you had others that were like, oh, I really want to be a pilot, you know, my dad's in the RAF. So there was definite pros and cons that these children, by the time they'd got to 18 or nearing 18, they felt that military life had equipped them really well. But obviously they recognised that it was a patchwork and it made them who they are, good and bad.
Yeah, oh, I love about looking for the positives, because this is a thing, you know, things that happen in our life shape us, don't they? And even the stuff that we look back and, you know, don't think of fondly, they shape us as well as the stuff that we do think of fondly as well. So, okay, so we know that there's at least 70,000 service children in schools in England. You know, but what is it that we need to be providing for these children to give them more support?
So I think first and foremost, it's that awareness that we spoke about. It's just having it on your radar in that there may be military children coming into your education setting, sometimes for really short periods of time, because then they get posted again and they have to move again. Or you might have a military child that is living unaccompanied. So that's a term that is becoming more and more recognised. It's where a military family chooses to buy a home or whatever and settle in one place, and the service person goes away to work. So they work away Monday to Friday, and then they come home at the weekends, and then they may deploy as well. So you've got a lot of repeated separation there that the child's experiencing. So there's lots of variables. So again, it's awareness at like sort of really being aware that you may have military children. In England, there's the service pupil premium. So that is a government fund. So it's £310 per military child per annum that every school can apply for from the government. As a charity, it's really important to us that schools understand that fund and spend it appropriately. It's for pastoral support due to their unique challenges of being part of a military family. So it really is about spending that premium correctly, not lumping it in with pupil premium. It's completely different for completely different needs and completely different amounts. You know, my daughter went to one school and they were giving her free school meals, and she's like, no, my dad's in the military. And it's just about understanding, yes, there is a government fund for military children in education settings in England, but it's for pastoral support. Let's really recognise that they're two different groups, and let's spend that. And Little Troopers is really
knowing how to
helping,
use it, isn't it?
Yeah, and understanding that you can have an impact. I think, a lot of schools say, well, we've only got one military child, so the premium is only £300. What can we, £310, what can we do with that will really make a difference? And as a charity, we want to really shout from the rooftops, you can beneficially impact a military child in your education setting with that small amount, and love and energy and just a little bit of care. You can really benefit their life, be that having a couple of books in the school library about military life, be that just once a month taking that child for half an hour and just sort of saying, tell me what's going on at home, like, is mum and dad at home at the moment, and just understanding what's going on for that military child so they can be best supported in the education setting. And bringing those military children together is really important as well. If you do have a group of military children, they won't necessarily know each other just because they're from the military community, but they all share very similar circumstances, and they can gain so much from being together. We were at a school last week working with some year 7s, and we brought them together. Obviously, they've only been in school since September, so they didn't know each other. And it was just so lovely. Them going, I didn't know your dad was in the army as well. And I sit next to her in maths, but I didn't know that her dad was in the army. Now we can talk about it. That was so special that, they didn't realise that they had something in common, because it's just not something that kids talk about, I guess, unless we're engineering that.
Could it ever happen then where both parents are away at the same time?
Yeah, that obviously does happen. We were a dual serving family, so I was serving and my husband was serving at the same time, and we had a daughter. That's not easy. There's lots of dual serving families.
How does that even work?
Well, they might not be in the same service. So you might have one parent in the RAF and one parent in the Navy. We absolutely have heard from families where children have to live with grandparents for a period of time because both parents, are serving overseas or whatever it may be. You absolutely could have that scenario in your education setting where you could have a pupil that have both parents away at the same time, and they obviously need support. I think the military tries where possible for that not to be commonplace, because that's really difficult. But it does happen, of course it does. And that does need really, real support in school.
Yeah, and really understanding the situation as well. So why are you so passionate then? Because it's really obvious that you're so passionate, which is so lovely to see. But why are you so passionate about getting support for children and celebrating children from military families as well?
Obviously, I'm part of a military family. I joined the army myself when I was a teenager. Off I trotted, much to my mum's dismay. I joined the military and I went to Kosovo, and I had some great experiences. And my husband's still serving, and we have our daughter. In particular, Little Troopers at school, why I was so passionate to bring this project to fruition, and why it really has been a project that we, as a charity have invested so much time in over the last few years, is because my daughter, as I said, she's 18. She's gone to university this year, and I have watched her go through all different scenarios, from moving regularly. She went to, just as a good scenario to sort of highlight, she went to a primary school and did year 6, then she went to a secondary school to do year 7, but then we got posted to a middle school area, so then she did year 8 in a middle school, then she did year 9 in an upper school, then we got posted again, so she went back to a secondary school, and when you write that on paper, everyone's like, oh my goodness, but actually in real time there was no support, no one understood it, everyone was like, what is going on, why has she been to so many schools, why has she been through so many different schools? As a military family, you get told where you're going, sometimes with a bit of notice, sometimes with not a lot of notice. You pack your stuff into a removal van, you don't know the house you're going to, you definitely don't know the school, sometimes you can't easily get into a school. These are the realities, and I was seeing it firsthand, and then also seeing firsthand the impact that was having on my daughter. Schools just did not understand military movements and changes, and there was nothing out there to support. Just the UCAS application process that my daughter's just gone through. My daughter was born in Germany because that's where we were at the time. And UCAS could not recognise that. They were asking her for visas. They were asking her for, proof of residence. And she's like, but I'm British. I was born under British Forces Germany. So she's got British passport, British birth certificate. It's just under the military bubble. I'll just put you were born in the UK. And she was like, but I wasn't. That's part of my identity. And I think this is something that I'm passionate about, is military children are often proud of the fact that they're in a British Armed Forces family, and it is a patchwork. It makes them who they are. So if we're then saying, oh, don't worry, put that you were born in, we're taking their identity away from them.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. Like, we need to, as a society, we need to recognise British Armed Forces children, recognise what they're going through. And, in the end, she had to put that she was born in the UK for UCAS to accept her application and for her to go on the university journey. But that really affected her. She didn't like it. And, and I think it's those type of things that make me passionate, is that I've seen firsthand what misunderstanding and the impact that can have.
I suppose in some ways, like, I see that as something, if that was me, I'd see that as something quite special about me.
She loves it.
That's then been taken away.
Yeah, exactly that. And, another thing that I plead, anybody listening from an education setting, if you do have a new child come in the school that is military, never say, and where are you from? Because military children are not from anywhere. They might be born in Germany, lived in America, they might have lived up in North Yorkshire and then got posted down to Colchester, and their identity comes from their family unit and their existence in the military community often. They're not, my daughter's not from anywhere. She's lived all over the world in many places, often for just 2 years at a time. So it's really important that we recognise that the identity of a military child and their timeline of military life is going to look different to their civilian peers.
So a question for you then, because when I was teaching, I don't know, I don't think I ever came into contact with, well, actually I probably did, because I was a supply teacher and I did lots of supply, but like we've just talked about, I wouldn't have known. So how could a teacher ask to show an interest in the child's journey without saying, so where are you from? Like, what's the right question to ask?
Yeah, exactly. So, where in the world have you lived? That's really important. How many houses have you lived in? That's always a good kind of icebreaker, because kids will always, we did that with the year 7s last week when we were working with them. We were doing some filming for Little Troopers at school, and, a really good icebreaker is, right, how many houses have you lived in? What countries have you lived in? And they'll always be like, oh, I remember this house with awful curtains where we live, because again, military housing is difficult. They can't decorate their bedrooms, that kind of thing. So yeah, really, really interesting. But I would definitely say, how many houses have you lived in? Where have you lived? And how many schools have you been to? Are really great questions to ask, because that is what gives them their identity. Like, they will really know the answers to those questions and really be able to inform you and feel good about it.
Yeah, and I suppose for the teacher's point of view as well, it's about being able to be interested in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And terminology is really, really important. A lot of, we've got lots on our website, loads of just free downloadable resources for schools and stuff, and one of them is terminology, because they will use the words like posting, deployment, all those kind of things, quite military specific terminology that the child will just think is really normal and everybody knows what it means. But the reality is that not every teacher will have had any connection to the military ever. And we, Little Troopers feels it's our job to help schools to navigate that.
Yeah, which I think is amazing work. So you're a teacher and you're listening. What 3 actionable steps can you share for teachers to get more information on how they can support and celebrate military families, especially if they have military families in their schools?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are 3 definite things that you can do. One is really communicate with your families. the only consistent in military life is inconsistency. Like, change is just so normal for a military family, and quick change. Oh, you're moving in 6 weeks to the other end of the country. That is like a really normal scenario. So I think it's communicating to your families and also letting them know that you really welcome information in. So again, we've got loads of downloadable resources where we like really easy, colourful forms, for want of a better word, that we really advocate schools have in reception or whatever. And it's just about, tell us about what's going on, and putting something on your school newsletter. If you're a military family, please do let us know. Please do tell us what's going on so we can best support your child. I think communication is really good, but families need to know that you want to know that information. Do you see what I mean? So
I see what you mean.
Yes, we welcome your information if you're a military family, I think is really, really important. So then if there is separation happening, deployment happening, a move happening, that you're sort of switched on to that and you can support it if there is any changes in behaviour in the classroom. Explore Little Troopers at school, the website, littletroopers.net. There's a whole at school section, and there is so many resources that we've created. They're all tangible. They can all be printed. If you're just thinking, oh, I just want some activity sheets, we've got a 2-hour workshop, which is a great way to bring your military children together. It's all free. There's wellbeing course templates, primary and secondary, resource packs, primary and secondary, Forces Life Club. We really advocate schools have a Forces Life Club, and there's all the sessions that have been created by educational psychologists and teachers and mindfulness experts. We've worked with some absolutely great people to just do loads of planning for schools to enable you to just go on the website, get some resources and bring them into the school day. And it can also be with civilian children as well. It's not just if you just want to raise awareness across the school. There's lots to do that. And bring your military children together would be the third one. As I said, we really, really love it when schools have a Little Troopers club, Forces Life Club, whatever you'd like to call it. Maybe that's just once a month after school or lunchtime, whatever that may be, that there's an opportunity for your military children to all come together and do some craft. We've got crafty Little Troopers sheets on our website, which are some military crafts that schools can do, or you might want to do some mindfulness stuff around some emotions they're feeling. So communication, explore Little Troopers at school, and bring your military children together.
Oh, thank you. What amazing tips there. And I think, you mentioned something really important there. It's not just, so obviously it's great to bring the children together so that they can talk to each other about their own experiences, but it's not just about educating the educators. You mentioned about other children in school knowing, and imagine if you made a really great friend who has no idea and doesn't understand your family life. That's really important. Really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I speak at lots of conferences and stuff, and one thing that I always start with often is, if it's primary, is about early years and the role play area and the dressing up, the role play outfits that are available, because very often there's no military representation in there, and there's a police person's outfit, fire person's outfit, nurses, doctors, all that kind of thing, but no military representation. And it's why is that? Why are we not including the British Armed Forces? We definitely don't have to have guns or anything like that, and that's what this Educate the Educator piece is about. You can join the military as a vet or a dental nurse, all these great engineering, loads of different roles. So it's about us, absolutely, as you said, a wider sense of inclusion and awareness, and let's have those outfits in early years. Let's use some Little Troopers resources for the whole school. Let's have an assembly about military life, maybe get a local base to come in and talk a little bit. They're always welcome to that, and have an assembly at Armed Forces Day. I think it is about that, and it's also about supporting. It was really interesting what you just said about, say, a military child and a civilian child become the best of buddies. Well, the military child might, with short notice, be posted away. And then you do have to manage the civilian child's lost their best friend at short notice because they got posted, and I think that needs managing and understanding and recognizing as well. We do have something called Little Troopers letters, which I'd also like to quickly highlight because that's free, and that is for that exact scenario where we send the school or the parent a pack, letter writing packs. There's 2 in there, one for the child who's moving away and one to give their little best buddy. And they can stay in touch with writing, and there's stickers and loads of fun stuff in there, but it enables them to stay friends even though they've had to be posted for military reasons. So yeah, I think there's lots of things to consider.
I feel like we've ended the podcast on a bit of a teary note. And it's interesting because actually in that scenario as well, children need encouragement. It's one of those things where they're not going to do it unless they're encouraged to do it. They might write a letter, but depending on their age, they're not necessarily going to be able to send it. And it is really easy for children's friendships to break down. They don't have access to phones yet and this kind of thing. And think about that from my own childhood, I just lost touch with people and didn't really know how to. Well, I don't even know how to get in touch now, and it's
and
not,
if you think,
not helpful.
I wasn't a military child, so my friends now, at my age, are girls I went to school with still, so they've been in my life a really long time. Like my daughter's never going to have that because she moved every 2 years for her whole life. So you've constantly got this change in friendships, and there's good qualities that come from that. And others is that you don't have those consistent friendships. So anything we can do in schools or at home to promote them continuing is important for all children.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Cool. So how can we find out more about you?
So really easy, littletroopers.net is our website. And as I say, we've got an at school section where we really welcome schools come, find, download, utilise all the resources available. We have a Little Troopers at School Teachers Facebook group, which is really active. It's just for education professionals if they want to ask a question about a military child in their school or the Service People Premium or whatever. We've got a school-specific newsletter that goes out every month full of information, ways you can support military children in your school. There's just loads going on. We've got our Squad, the podcast, which is all about military teens in education settings. So again, that's a great listen if you want to utilise it with a bunch of teens at school or listen yourself to understand better. Some of those did get me a little bit teary because they're really sharing, they're teenagers, so they were sort of 7 when Iraq and Afghan, and some of their memories of having a parent in war has really shaped who they are today. So I think that's a great listen if you're a secondary teacher and you think you might have military children in your school. So yeah, come and find us. I really hope we can help loads of you support the education of military children.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Can you let me know what your Facebook page is? Because I don't have it here, and I'll make sure that it's on the show notes because I think that will be so valuable. Like we have a number of Facebook groups ourselves, and teachers, do utilise Facebook groups and get support there. So that would be brilliant. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and bringing so much knowledge that we don't know. And that's just one thing I really love.
Absolute pleasure. Obviously, it's my life. I'm living and breathing this military life. So if I can help raise awareness anywhere and obviously highlight how Little Troopers can help, I love doing that.
Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you.